Welcome to training for ISICS Standard 1.5.2 Air Ambulance Scene Flight Landing Zone Coordination. The ISICS-B has adopted an updated standard that establishes protocol for the use of the Iowa Statewide Interoperable Communications System and conventional channels for coordinating an air ambulance landing zone. The two documents are ISICS Standard 1.5.2 Air Ambulance Scene Flight Landing Zone Coordination and Policy 2021-04 700 MHz air-to-ground channels. This presentation will cover various aspects of ISICS use for establishing and maintaining air ambulance landing zones. Coordinating landing zones for air ambulances is vital for public safety missions involving medical emergencies that require the use of aircraft for patient transport. In addition, landing an air ambulance is a high-risk operation. New resources are now available for these types of missions. Also, agencies have generally used many different processes in the past. Consistency among agencies will aid operational success. As a refresher, we're going to go over some basics types of radio communication. The first is simplex. This fits the concept of one-to-many communications and is essentially radio to radio. This means that large infrastructure is not needed as the radios communicate directly with each other. This leads to a very high communication success rate if the radios are within range of each other. In the graphic, the center radio is transmitting directly to the other radios that are receiving the message. All the receiving radios are within range of the radio that is transmitting. Simplex has its limitations, though. Much of it is related to the effective range. If radios are too far away from the radio that is transmitting, they will miss the traffic. The range is dependent on the frequency band being used and the power levels. In the image below, the radio on the left is transmitting, but the radios on the right are too far away to receive the transmission. In a real-world scenario, this would be similar to the radio on the left acknowledging something the radio in the center had said. However, the radios on the right would miss the acknowledgement. To overcome range limitations, repeated networks are implemented. You may be familiar with this type of network based on your local LMR network. In this scenario, infrastructure such as radio towers are used to receive a transmission from a radio and rebroadcast it out to the other radios. This helps extend the range of the network. In this scenario, the radio on the left is transmitting. The repeater tower receives the transmission and then repeats it back out to the other radios. Examples of repeated networks include ISICS and local agency repeaters. Repeated networks have their limitations as well. There needs to be enough infrastructure to support coverage requirements. In addition, the coverage patterns from the repeaters may not be consistent from one area to another. You may be familiar with the Iowa Homeland Security Regions. There are 6 of them across the state. The ISICS regional interoperable Talkgroups are configured to follow these areas. Please take a bit to find your county or your service area and note the region it is in. The ISICS regional interoperable tactical Talkgroups are available for landing an air ambulance. You can use the interoperable Talkgroups based on the region, your service area. For example, if you were in Region 3, you could use something like R3 TAC 32 or R3 TAC 33 to communicate with the air ambulance. If the ISICS interoperable TACs are used, the use should be consistent with ISICS Standard 1.5.0. Start with the lowest numbered, first available regional TAC that covers your region, first, such as R1 TAC 12, R2 TAC 22, R3 TAC 32, R4 TAC 42, R5 TAC 52, or R6 TAC 62. If those are not available, move to the next highest numbered talk group such as R1 TAC 13, R2 TAC 23, R3 TAC 33, R4 TAC 43, R5 TAC 53, or R6 TAC 63. If all the ISICS regional interoperable TACs are busy, or there is an extenuating circumstance, The ISICS statewide interoperable tacs are also available. However, the statewide tacs should only be used sparingly for landing and air ambulance, since those are also used for other events such as pursuits. You should not use a regional call talk group to land an air ambulance. There are several reasons for this. First, air ambulance services have stated that they prefer as close to one-on-one agency communication as possible. With a regional call talk group, that will not be possible. Other agencies will be listening and may have to put out a broadcast on the regional call for another threat or event, which would interrupt the landing zone communications. In addition, other communication centers or personnel may be hailing other communication centers or in-field personnel. In summary, if you are going to use ISICS to land an air ambulance, use a regional TAC. In addition to the ISICS regional TACs, there are some new digital and convention 700 MHz air-to-ground channels. The highlighted channels are Simplex and will probably be the ones you would use if a conventional 700 MHz air-to-ground channel was used, since there is no repeaters in Iowa that carry the 700 MHz air-to-ground channels. 7AG88D, highlighted in yellow, is a designated landing zone channel when these are used. Just like the ISICS talk groups, these should be reserved in status board when they are used. As a reminder, these channels will not likely be heard in dispatch when they are used for a landing. In addition to the ISICS regional TACs and the new 700 MHz air-to-ground channels, legacy conventional VHF resources are also available, and you have likely used them in the past. If necessary, these VHF resources can be patched into an ISICS regional interoperable TAC. Please keep in mind that coordination is needed for successful communications. This includes the air ambulance, dispatch, and other personnel. When selecting a resource to use, generally dispatch will have greatest awareness of what is available, especially on ISICS. Be aware of the technological capacities of air ambulance, dispatch, and in-field personnel. The capabilities of agencies will often vary. And avoid use of regional call talk groups to land an air ambulance. If they are on your dispatch console as a box or tile, you may be able to change it to regional TAC. If you don't know how to do this, talk to your supervisor. When it comes to technology, there are several things to consider. For legacy conventional resources, those generally are familiarity with the channel, simplex operations that does not rely on infrastructure, limited range, could be analog, potential for static and skip to interfere with communications, may not be available in dispatch. For the new 700 MHz air-to-ground channels, please remember, they are digital simplex channels and will have limited range. They are not reliant on infrastructure. They may not be in all radios, and will likely not be available in dispatch. For the ISICS regional interoperable tactical talk groups, these will offer digital wide area communication with the potential for long-range communications. They will generally be available in dispatch, so patching may be an option. They are dependent on coverage from the ISICS infrastructure and may not yet be in all radios. There are some operational considerations to keep in mind as well. Those include the channels and talk groups that are programmed and available in portable and mobile radios of personnel, location of landing and coverage footprint of radio systems. Simplex radio-to-radio communications is generally accepted as the safest communications medium to land an aircraft. Need for long-range communication may necessitate the use of an ISICS regional interoperable talk group. If the ISICS coverage is sufficient, the regional interoperable talk group may be used for the landing. Reserve the resources that are being used on status board. In addition, other operational considerations have to be factored in, such as that helicopters may have to clear the tower from their launch point before they can change their radio to what agencies are using for the landing. Some air medical providers have policies that necessitate silence in the cabin for the first 5 minutes during takeoff and the last 5 minutes before a landing. Different providers may have different resources available to them. If a primary helicopter is out for maintenance, its replacement may not have the same resources that the normal helicopter does. In general, for landings that involve aircraft equipped with ISICS radios, you will have an option to use an ISICS Regional Interoperable Tactical Talk Group. This can be used if ISICS coverage is sufficient in the landing zone. The talk group being used must be coordinated with the air ambulance. You should also reserve the talk group on status board. The ISICS Regional TAC may be patched into local operational channel or talk group. This will allow the aircraft, on-scene personnel, and dispatch a means to communicate. For landings that involve aircraft not equipped with ISICS radios, you will likely need to use a Simplex channel. The channel used must be in the aircraft's and on-scene personnel's radios. There is an option to use the 700 MHz air-to-ground channels or other VHF conventional channels. There will be some situations that are unique as well. In some situations, an ISICS Regional Interoperable TAC talk group may be used to establish long-range communication with the air ambulance, but Simplex is used to land the air ambulance. If the scene has several agencies present with a lot of radio traffic, it may be beneficial to move the landing to a separate ISICS Regional Interoperable TAC talk group or Simplex channel. Here is how the Simplex Communications with an air ambulance works. Using Simplex radio-to-radio communication, your radio would be transmitting directly to the helicopter. This can bring a higher probability of successful communications, but there is less range. Also, dispatch may not hear it. For repeated communications with an air ambulance, your radio would be transmitting directly to a tower that would broadcast the transmission to the helicopter. This will get you longer range, and dispatch will likely hear it. However, it is dependent on the infrastructure providing enough coverage. Thank you for taking the time to view this training model. If you have any questions, please direct them to the training committee.